Well, there's Sarah Ault. Why don't you tell us about some things?
Okay, sounds good. Hello everybody. My name is folk builder Sara Ault. I am a folk builder out of Wisconsin. I help with the Asatru Academy, and I help Nick with the Runestone. You might have also seen some of my posts if you were on MeWe about ancestors and the importance of building a relationship with them and the gifting cycle. So Nick asked me to talk about community tonight. And if you bear with me, I would like to share with you a recent story that happened to me. Um, since I live in Wisconsin, it's obviously cold, but I live in a very small town on the lakefront. Uh, there's under 10,000 people here, and I think that number is generous to what is actually living here. We have already hit negative temperatures. It's been very cold. We have a lot of snow. And on the last day of November, it was about -12 out. They were supposed to have a holiday parade downtown that night, but I didn't have my children. So I was looking forward to staying warm and maybe catching a movie or finishing a book in my house. And as I was getting all comfy, an alert came across my phone. There was a missing child in town, a missing 7-year-old. He was last seen by the boat launch on our river. So I didn't even think about it. I just threw on some warm clothes. I grabbed some flashlights, a blanket, and headed to the area in hopes of just being some sort of help. And so many in this town had the same idea. We parked on the other side of the river from where the professionals were already searching the water. Um, with the updates that were being given to us by the police, we learned that this little one was autistic. And for those that don't know me, I also have an autistic son. And while there are no two autistic kids that are alike, they often share similar traits. Um, a lot of autistic kids wander off. I thankfully did not have that issue with my son. He constantly wanted to be with me, but I know a lot of parents that do, and it's a scary thing to always have to. You can't have that moment as a parent to lose sight of them for a second because they'll be gone. They are very good escape artists. And unfortunately, with autistic kids, for some reason, they're drawn to the water. And so when the group of us that were together heard this, we all shared that common thought. Um, you will often hear news stories, heartwarming stories of autistic kids that wander off and they're found in the woods a day later, and maybe they were befriended by a dog in the woods or a firefighter found them or something. And unfortunately, these are the exceptions and not the rules. The current leading cause of death for an autistic child is drowning. And this is a reality that many in our community share. So the police asked us to stay out of the direct area so their dogs could work unhindered. So we formed search groups and we went to local parks. The family spokesman had given a list of parks and places that the child would have been familiar with in case he had wandered off to there. So after about 3 hours of doing that and not being able to feel my toes, I headed home and just watched for updates. All night long, you could hear the National Guard helicopters going over and over the city. In the early morning hours on the first day of December, the sound stopped, and the police updated that some of the boys' personal items were found in the river, and the DNR had narrowed down the search. And a couple hours after that, the boy's body was found. As I reflected on everything that had happened that night and the way the community had come together and the sorrow that we all now shared and the way we embraced the family after as a community, I was reminded of how thankful I am to live in this area. Just seeing how within minutes of the alerts. So many people came to the area not to be onlookers of a tragic event, but to be active helpers, forming groups, coordinating with others so all the area was covered, listening to the directions of the authority as not to be a hindrance, but being able to cover a larger area. Still others bringing warmers and coffee. People just kept coming all night and early morning. Strangers who didn't know the family but just knew that a small resident of our town was missing and needed help. And they just wanted to do whatever they could. As I thought about this is community. In this day and age when you often don't know, or in some cases don't want to know your neighbors, this sense of community is so lacking. It serves as a reminder to appreciate when you see it around you and to help foster it by being involved in it. And it also reminded me of how very thankful I am that I came home to the community of folk within the AFA. Our relationship with our gods and our ancestors matter, but also the relationships we build within the AFA. All members of the AFA are the inner guard. As we stand in worship before our gods, we share a special group haminja. This relationship to each other requires a special trust and loyalty. Because the AFA community shares in this, we hold each other accountable. This is why it's important and encouraged to build strong bonds with each other. Your AFA community is who you should lean on when it's needed until you can stand on your own again. So often when a person is going through rough times, they retreat and isolate themselves. There is no reason to do this when you are a member of the AFA community. Reach out. Reach out to a folk builder, a fellow member, one of the Gothar, because we are all stronger as a community when the community grows together and moves forward together. And that is what I have.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I know you wrote that in the previous runestone, and reading it, there was a bit of I don't know, weird to it that I'd asked you to speak on community back in October for tonight, and then you had the perfect story and the perfect write up just truly speak to that and the importance of it. And absolutely, we have we see often members of the AFA just kind of close off or run away or just break contact when they're going through a rough time. But we also see members of the AFA who hunker down and really lean on us and help let us have the honor of helping them, whether it be through folk services or through counseling with our Gothar. It is something that we are fortunate to be able to do for our folk. And we want to do that. And we want to be able to build those bonds and be even closer with our folk every day. And even outside of the direct AFA, it's something we want to do. We do all the time, every month, with our food pantry and the extra donations that we can give, and the toy drive and the back to school books and coat drives. When we have our members that rallied around the the devastation and destruction following the hurricanes back a couple months ago, and went out to North Carolina and to help out. All of these situations where we can really build bonds and grow together through actually leaning on each other and being part of a community. So I appreciate you talking about it and sharing that story with us again.
Thank you.
So as Go the East, when I found it quite synchronistic that we are all, on the same page, because my brother Go the East, he always talks about that when times get tough, as Folk Builder Rice mentioned, that we should, turn into each other. Is that we should not turn away, we should not run away, we should not, seek solitude to find our solace and our comfort. We should turn to our fellow Asatru who are, there for us. It's the reason why our church exists, not only to give the due worship to our ancestors and the gods themselves, but to bind ourselves together in a good way, to be that community for each other, to be a body of folk, as Folk Builder Malilo said earlier, who are loyal to the ACR. And that loyalty also extends, by our very association and our reason for coming together, to each other. I would like to also touch on something that Miss Sara said earlier about, that the search for that child. I have been on a fair number of such excursions, as you said, as one of those professionals on the other side of the river. And, there were I've had several calls, emergency scenes where autistic children have been present, and a few autistic adults. In fact, Sara, one of my little celebrated accomplishment, even by me, but I was thanked profusely by the family, was I used a thermal imaging camera one night to find a autistic man who was in his 30s, I think, 30s or 40s. He had gone out in the woods. Now in South Georgia in January, it's not that cold relatively, but as I said earlier, we have a lot of moisture in the air, so it's a bitter, seep into your bones cold. And poor guy had wandered off into the woods. He had wandered off into about a 70-acre patch, which was surrounded by homes, but he had wandered into the one kind of wilderness in that area. And I was able to locate him sitting on a stump, sitting on a fallen log, just shivering in the darkness. And I mean total darkness, because I had to find him with a thermal imaging camera. And of course, he lit up like a Yule tree in the darkness. But coming away from that, I know it's not necessarily a folk-derived thing, but something that, I don't even know, it may be a Bible verse. I hope it's not, but something that the Shriners say, because I don't know if everybody knows that the Shriners deal with disabled and, disabled children and children with, deformities and whatnot. And their famous thing is a man has never stood so tall, or a man never stands so tall except for when he stoops to aid an injured child. And I'm probably butchering that quote, but you guys get the gist. And, it's something of an overarching theme that we talk about. We kind of go round and round with these things. And I don't mean that in a negative light. I mean, we are constantly revisiting these themes. And one of our themes for us menfolk, and I mean physically, is that we're always encouraging each other and should encourage each other to be physically strong. And sometimes I think all of us lose sight of why strength is to be developed. Physical strength is to be developed, and also spiritual strength. And one of the chief reasons why strength is important of a physical nature and of a spiritual nature is to shepherd and safeguard the weak. And that is not a derogatory term. It is not, I don't mean it in a derogatory way. We cultivate, and maintain strength because it is the responsibility of the strong to shepherd and safeguard the weak. It takes all shapes and sizes to run the world, to run a people, to run a folk, to run a church. So just because you are not as physically strong as, your brothers does not mean that you do not have value. But what it does mean for those brothers and sisters who are stronger than you is that it is their responsibility to protect you should you be encountered with, overwhelming strength, from a foe. So that is the point of cultivating strength. And back to, the whole thing about helping out the weak and injured, and everybody coming out. That was so beautiful, Sarah, to hear. It really restores your faith in humanity when everybody, just like you did, said, you know what? I could sit here and watch this movie and read this book, and I could just sip my drink and be warm inside. But damn it, there's a child out there who doesn't know that he's in danger, doesn't understand what's going on, or whatever the situation may be, that everybody had the same thought and said, I'm going to go help. That is just amazing. And that is the definition. That is, you're right, sir. That is the true definition of community, is sacrificing comfort for the safety and well-being of one of your number. That is just, you can't get it any better than that. And there is actually, since we were talking about the Nordics a lot today, and aren't we always, as there is a Swedish phrase that translated into English, because I'm not going to butcher the Swedish, is "Bare is he whose back stands without a brother." There it is. I mean, I said you can't get more simpler than that, but there it is. That's even simpler. Your back is bare. You are bare. You are defenseless. Have you no brothers, or have you no sisters who can stand with you and protect you and share the load with you? Your back is completely bare. You are completely caught off guard and outside the inner yard, should you have no brothers to guard your back. So I can't think of any better topics, you guys, for this time of the year, for this holy tide, than to talk about community and what it means for us to cultivate and share our strength and use it wisely to shepherd those among us who and protect them and look after them and make sure they are okay during such a trying time. So, like we've all said tonight, it is our, it is literally our sacred duty to each other to maintain these things, to maintain these traditions and these things that we do in service of each other. Now, I, have a particular professional reason for being, kind of concerned with these things and the kind of touchy-feely expressions of it. And I am reminded, since one of my close professional friends, a young fellow who is going to become a Air Force pararescue man. And if you don't know anything about that, these are the guys that the super sneaky special forces guys call in to get them when they're hurt or injured. These are these super medics. In fact, pararescue men's school is called Superman School. It has a 90% attrition rate. And if you're following along at home and doing your math, that means 1 out of every 10 people pass that class. But the reason why I told you all that is that their motto is, this we do so that others may live. And I have translated that in my meditations recently as, my role as a priest of this church is that this I do so that others may come home. Because I do it to bring more and more of our folk home to their, rightful place in the only church of the Aesir in Midgard, but also to maintain that and to enrich their lives and to enrich all of our lives and to grow this church into the force for good for our people that it should be and deserves to be. So that's the end of my sermonizing to you guys tonight. So if you have any questions or anything, just let me know.
Thank you so much, Gothi. You are a font of wisdom as always.